The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
I am Emily Swallow, also known as the Armorer on The Mandalorian. And I'm just giving a little shout out to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast because this is the way.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books, TV shows, and more, we're looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in the Star Wars universe. Be sure to follow The Secrets of Star Wars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, or on the StarQuest YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X, where we're at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And be sure to get your official Star Wars gear at sqpn.com/merch. I'm your host, Patrick Mason, and joining me tonight on the panel are Robert King. Hey, Robert.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And how are you doing, Jeff?
Oh, hello there, Patrick.
Hello there. And we are going to do a recap of Andor Season 1. And we're going to do our best not to talk about it for 7 hours, because I could probably just go on and on and on about the show, because it's one of my favorite Star Wars, especially in the Disney era properties. So that's briefly me. So Andor Season 1, as you all remember, came out a couple years ago, and we followed Andor, Cassian of Rogue One fame, as he began his journey into the rebellion. So let me go around and get some personal thoughts about the show from y'all. As you've already heard, I absolutely love the show, but I figured we'd let you guys give a chance. Robert, what did you think about Andor Season 1?
I am probably the least enthusiastic person about Andor on this panel, I would guess, because I only loved it. I didn't love it, you know?
Love it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The show is an incredible example of writing dialogue and character, of integrating like really grounded stories with high quality special effects, and sort of touching against the lore without like just becoming a lore dump. But I was never interested in the character of Cassian Andor to begin with. And I think he's still the least interesting character in the show. And I just watch the show for like everybody else, because they're all amazing. And I'm like, why are we following Andor here? Why is the show named for him? And there it is. I mean, it's a great show with kind of this like weird hole in the middle of it for me. But you know, I think I may be in the minority with that opinion. So I'll just hang out here in the minority.
All right. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I also really love the show. I think this one is probably my second favorite, maybe third of the live action, just because I love The Mandalorian so much. I love the lore and the, how it's like such a good spinoff of the Clone Wars and Rebels. And so I don't think Andor tops that for me, but it is one of the better of the live action shows. And I absolutely love it as well. The first season was just such a great, because we hadn't really in canon, we've gotten Rebels. So we had that little bit of insight into kind of one, basically one rebel cell, one planet, essentially, their story of developing the rebellion, toward what we see in the original movies. But this is setting up a wider, the whole wider story, because we didn't know. I think I knew Mon Mothma was supposed to be in the show, but I didn't realize it was going to almost be like a combo of she was going to be like the second POV character in this show. Like I was expecting it would mainly be Andor with a little bit of Mon Mothma, but no, we got a lot of really good insight into her development toward what she'll become in the movies. And while I think I understand your point, Robert, that Andor is maybe not the most interesting in this season, the character of Cassian Andor, but I think the show season 1 was all set up for what will really be his kind of deep dive into the rebellion that we'll get in season 2. So I think, like a lot of Andor episodes, there's 2 episodes of table setting and then kind of one big payoff episode, like the eye and the, it's like every third episode, or, the end of the arc is kind of the payoff after a couple episodes of setup, which I feel like season 1 is kind of in a way the setup for season 2, in that way that it's going to be a lot of table setting now. And then we're going to really see what, how Andor kind of really becomes a believer in the rebellion in this show. So, but yeah, I absolutely love the show. Love the story of Mon Mothma. Loved, Andor's side of things. I love Luthen's story because he's definitely one of the most interesting characters in the show. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else we learn about him. And I kind of think he might still be a big mystery, and they won't really reveal a whole lot. He'll just kind of be this enigmatic figure. But I'm excited to see what they show. But yeah, I absolutely love the show.
Yeah, but Andor, for me, I think it fits within the top 3 TV shows, seasons of TV show I've ever watched. It's not total TV shows. It would be a different, so we'll see how season 2 plays out. But I have a feeling it'll be in the top 3 or 4 in that too. But yeah, it's right behind Firefly, what we got of season 1 before it was canceled. And Angel season 4, if you've never watched it, the rest of Angel's not great, but that season is amazing. So for me, it's possible.
Power too, right?
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, derail me hard as you could. So I love. There's so many things I love about Andor, and so we'll just get into it as we go because there's just so much to talk about. I think something I want to key off of is we talked about Cassian, and I do agree he's not really the most interesting character. In reality, he's, in my opinion, he's kind of a vehicle for showcasing different parts of the rebellion and different things that are going on. He's also, oddly enough, becomes a lynch point around which all of the other really interesting characters, POV characters we get in the show. As much as everybody hates Cyril, I love Cyril. He's such a strange,
amazing,
quirky character.
I was so glad to see he'll be back in season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have some theories about him, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Was it like Darth Cyril?
Not quite that,
but we got Cyril, we've got Luthen, we've got Mon Mothma, and Deidre Murrow as kind of our POV characters, right? We follow these folks through the story throughout the whole show. So with our cast of characters, who are you all drawn to in particular? What was your favorite sort of when you got to that scene and you're like, oh, it's Mon Mothma scene again? Yes, I'm in, or which was your favorite, maybe least favorite?
For me, I think it was definitely Luthen. And we still don't, like I said, we still know a lot about him. It seems like maybe he had a family member or a loved one who was a Jedi who was, killed by the Empire in Order 66, or he knew somebody who was, killed by the Empire otherwise. But starting out as just kind of this, he's just kind of assigning missions to, I love the scene where I believe the character's name is Lonnie of all things, but the one guy who's working in the ISB that has been kind of passing info to Luthen, and he has this whole speech on, I sacrifice. I can't remember the quote, but it's like I sacrificed my future for a sunrise I will never see, or something along those lines. And what did I give?
So good.
Everything.
Yeah.
And then he has a kyber crystal as well. And he has this whole antiquity shop, which is really, there's a lot of Easter eggs there. If you've ever seen or paid attention to some of the extra material, like there's some things from Rebels, there's things from Knights of the Old Republic that he talks about. So there's a lot of good antiquity stuff. So I'm so curious about what his character, like what his story is. And he has the coolest ship ever that has like the spinning, lightsaber almost kind of a thing when he fights the Empire. But yeah, I think Luthen's definitely the most interesting for me. And Mon Mothma is really interesting as well. And a good tie-in that I just finished reading was there's a book that just came out kind of on the early days of the Empire, but it's a Mon Mothma focused book, kind of talking about how she navigates the early days of the rebellion with Bail Organa. It's called Mask of Fear, or Reign of Terror, or Reign of Empire Mask of Fear is the first one. I think it's gonna be a trilogy, but I'll plug that book if you've not read it. It's really good, like early setup, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what they do, the parallels to that in the show. But yeah, I think Luthen and Mon Mothma were probably the most interesting for me in this season.
I think it's hard to argue with Luthen as a favorite character in this show. The writing, his monologues are so good, and his like just the mystery of his character, how many different faces he has throughout the show, and it's Stellan Skarsgård's performance is just masterful.
It's so good.
Yeah, steals absolutely every scene he's in. But I really loved the Cyril and Dedra dynamic. They're like, they're like kind of two sides of the Javert coin, right? So you've got the incompetent Javert, and you've got the hyper competent Javert, and they just keep messing each other up. And I don't know. I love the fact that you really kind of get into their motivations and their ambitions, and you feel for them. You feel sorry for them when they fail. And yet you also recognize how horrible those ambitions are and the inhuman things that they are driven to do because their ambitions are themselves inherently inhuman. It's that putting of, especially with Cyril, putting the principle above the person, putting the rule above the actual person that the rule is meant to serve. That kind of fanatical dedication to law, to rules, to power is it's just deeply compelling. And again, the performances are fantastic. I mean, yeah.
It's almost like everyone believed they were who they were. Like all of the actors like just bought into it. Like they're like, we're this person and we're going to run with it. And they did such an amazing job. Every scene with Dedra, I absolutely adore. Like I've always loved the concept of the ISB, and we never get to see them really. Even in Rebels, it was all the Inquisitorial Squad and all that, and like to finally see the inner workings and finally see it work and see how both overcompetent and undercompetent they are at the same time, which they would have to because they're the Empire, and Dedra struggles within the organization itself, the sort of backbiting and infighting that you would have in that kind of an organization. Watching that play out on screen, I love. I both hate and love the fact that they utilize torture as a normal thing, because it's like the worst way to get information possible.
And they know that.
Right. And they know it, and then they do it, and they, oh yes, this is very high confidence because it's so-and-so doctor, and everybody in the room knows that what that means is this is torture information, and so it's really not that high confidence. I loved everything with Cyril. I love because I've been both Cyril and his squadron leader or whatever the name of that, like his captain. I've had both of those conversations. Yeah. In my career, the one where it's like, we're not going to investigate this because this is stupid. Like, this is two guys who got in way over their head, and they shouldn't have done this thing at all. And I've been Cyril, where I'm like, no, we need to dive into this. We need to figure out what happened exactly. And my boss is like, no, trust me, this does not need to go.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about his Sergeant Mosk.
The Sergeant.
Oh gosh,
yeah,
that guy is
such a great character.
So dedicated.
Yeah, all of the little characters in the show, like you said, they totally believe that you cannot imagine that this is an actor. It feels like these are genuinely some of the best performances I've seen in all of TV. Yeah.
And one of the things I love, and I think one of the things that plays off Cassian, he's a very quiet character, right? And that's one of the reasons he's not terribly interesting. It's because he's very quiet. Of all of the characters in the show, he does not have a grandiose speech, but almost everybody else does. You know, Cyril has his speech in front of the squadron that kind of falls flat. Luthen has his speech, what did I give up? Mon Mothma has her speech that she gives to the banker, where she takes his words and then re-feeds it to him, but with a different set of intensity to sort of get it across that she's really invested in this rebellion. Deidre has her speech, which she gives to Bix, explaining to her, like, how information is gathered. And that line at the end where Bix is like, you're not even going to believe me anyways. And you just see the smile on Deidre's face. And she's like, yeah. And that was such a good performance. Marva's speech.
Yeah.
And then of course the One Way Out speech. I mean, it's hard to get away from that one. Yeah, Kino Loy's speech. And I it's funny, the more I watch the show, the more interesting Andor becomes, because he's a vehicle for all these other characters. And while he does sort of, I think you're right in a way, he's kind of a hole in the middle, but I think it's more like a spoke, which hilariously is what he builds in that prison.
Well, I think that's intentional. Trying to figure out why the show is about Andor. I think the intention is that he is sort of the catalyst for so many other things, that he is, the pebble that starts the avalanche, the straw that breaks the camel's back. He is like this small, insignificant person whose actions set off the wider rebellion. He is, and this is a little bit the role he plays in Rogue One too. He's the one who kind of, in a sort of subtle or backwards way, inspires Jyn to go off on her mission and to give her stirring speech, right? So I think that's what they're aiming for with Andor, but maybe it lands that way for some people, but it didn't for me, and I wish it had, because again, Diego Luna's performance is amazing. He's just like, he inhabits that character so well, and I want to love him. Yeah.
I think, I definitely agree. He's because he kind of inspires Kino Loy's whole thing, or he's a part of that inspiration for Kino Loy to lead their floor and lead them to eventually overtake the prison. I think so. Yeah, I think his whole thing is he's kind of the guy in the shadows that So he's probably his whole life kind of been, because he starts off the season as kind of being this, kind of a criminal, kind of just a street level, criminal trading in, stolen Imperial tech or whatever, whatever he can do. He's just kind of whatever odd job he can do to get money, he's doing. So he's kind of trying to, he's that quiet guy in the shadows who's doing these things. And that's, I think, one reason why, by the time of Rogue One, he's I want to see he's a captain by rank in the Alliance Intelligence Service, and so he's I'm really interested to see how they develop him from, he has these street level, street survival skills, and he got more of them as he progressed through season 1, but he's gonna, by the end of season, by the time of Rogue One, he's obviously like fully a spy and fully doing all these things and like leading missions. So I'm really interested to see that progression even further in the show. So yeah, I think he's definitely like spoke in the wheels is a good, I think, analogy for what he is for them.
Yeah, and I think another way perhaps to consider him is so concurrently with Andor season 1 and season 2, we have Rebels season 1 through 4, and they happen like literally. Rebels starts 5 years before we get that at the very beginning of the first episode of Andor, 5 years before Battle of Yavin. So these are happening at the same time. And I think it's very interesting to me that our two main characters in both shows, Ezra Bridger is effectively a street urchin who is semi-involved in the life of crime, and Andor is a former street urchin who is a full-blown criminal at this point. And so you kind of have like, what would happen if Ezra had just kept growing up and hadn't gotten a Jedi helper until he's Cassian's age, which is potentially what Luthen is. I find that very fascinating.
So are we going to get a Rebels Andor Aladdin crossover? With street urchins coming from a life of crime, and maybe not. That's a bad idea.
Oh, I do think, and this isn't. I'm not saying I came up with this idea originally, but I think we could see a crossover. Maybe not an explicit crossover, but we see in Rebels in season 3 Mothma's extraction from Coruscant. We see the Ghost crew picking her up, and I'm really betting we're going to see Andor going on to Coruscant to get her, to help her escape after her big speech about the Gorman massacre, which is, if you've seen trailers or images, that is in the show. So I think we're going to see at least, we could see Andor's side of his mission to get Mon Mothma off Coruscant, and then we maybe see her on the other side of the airlock going into the, we see it like the Ghost in the, out in space or something, and then that's all we see because they don't want to, completely crossover. But I do think there will be that crossover, and then there's a lot of other parallel events and things, of course, going on between Rebels and Andor. So I definitely think it's a strong possibility we'll see some references to Rebels in Andor season 2.
Yeah. Before we get too far into the wild speculation, let's dial back a little bit, and I like to go through the arcs, if that's okay with y'all, just because the season is broken into what I think are 4 arcs. We've got Andor on the Run, the Heist at Aldhani, the Prison Break, and Ferrix and Rebellion. And these are just the words I'm using. So Andor on the Run is sort of where we get the introduction to Andor, who he is, sort of where he came from, who his people are. What did you guys like or dislike about this particular story arc?
I loved the immediate grounding of who he was, where he was, the world he inhabited, the very street level Star Wars in a way that we hadn't seen before. And I think this may be one reason at least why I keep struggling with Cassian Andor as a character, because there's all this really interesting backstory that's set up. He's searching for his sister, and his sister who he left behind on Kenari, and there's this mining disaster on Kenari which forced the Empire to abandon it, and there's implications of scandal and problems around that, and then we just don't go back to it. But that was really great stuff, and it grounded the character of Andor for me. It grounded the world that he lives in. I loved all of the side characters, Bix and Brasso, and just like the whole world of Ferrix was so beautifully developed, and I just thought it was a fantastic introduction to the character in the world.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, it's hard. Yeah, they really built up all these little small characters that at first you're like, why are we, spending time with all these people, and do they really matter? But then in the end of it, they do matter, because it's a whole big, like, everyone's fighting against the Empire who's come to Ferrix in search of Andor. So like Brasso's, I love Brasso. Like, if I'm ever in a big, rebellion, I want Brasso on my side, because he's a big, strong dude and like leader of men, like headbutting stormtroopers and all that. So I really love the world of Ferrix. Like, it's just, like you said, it's so well realized, and getting Marva is such a, like, at first you're like, okay, she's, if you hadn't seen the trailer, you might have thought, okay, she's just his mom, isn't really going to do much, but there's scenes in the trailer of her talking about how, talking about rebelling. Like, she's been, because her husband, Cassian's, adoptive father, was killed by the stormtroopers. And so she's been, had that anger for, 10 years or however long it was, burning. And it's kind of like fine. And like, what her words are kind of what leads in the end, what we see leads to the full out rebellion on Ferrix. So I think, getting all these great characters on Ferrix, I think is just a lot of fun. Like B2 Emo, great droid.
Yep.
And there's a theory that I like that. Yeah, I like the theory that he's going to be integrated into K2SO's programming, and that's how Cassian kind of reprograms one of the Imperial droids, is with like B2's memory core or whatever. But just a lot of great setup for characters, and the whole sister thing. There's speculation that she might be in season 2, because in some of the trailer, there's you have the people, survivors of Ferrix, on this like wheat planet with Bix and Brasso, and there's another woman there who's pregnant, and so there's speculation that is actually his sister, but remains to be seen if that storyline will ever be revisited. But his I wish, like you said, that they delved a little bit more into that in season 1, but hopefully they'll pick it back up in season 2. But this first arc was a great setup for the rest of the show, I think.
Yeah, if you were to imagine a space Pittsburgh, 40, 50 years ago, and then make that, you would get Ferrix effectively. Like, as a guy who's worked in an industrial facility or industrial environment like that, they did it so well. It's just such a working town, and you can feel it. Like, everybody has a job, everybody knows everybody knows how everything works. It's so real, and it's done so well. The interplay between Bix and Marva and B2 and all of the characters on the planet. It's a very living, feeling planet. And you can definitely feel also that Andor is sort of out of place in all of this. He is in sort of the criminal element piece of it, and he does his in and out of Ferrix is just very stark. And it sort of showcases that something is different about him and what he's doing here. And I love the introduction of Andor, and just where he's at, and and then what he does by the end of that very first scene, as kind of who he is and where he'll get pushed. Cyril's the beginning of his storyline starts here. It's just, did you modify your uniform? Light tailoring? No.
Well, Cyril's, we can blame, the Empire can blame Cyril for the Death Star getting destroyed, because if he hadn't chased after Andor in the first place, then, that whole mission, the whole Rogue One mission might not have happened, and might not have succeeded. So,
yeah.
At least we know who to blame.
Yep.
It's Cyril's
fault. Or the
fault.
Empire does.
It's Cyril's
I guess we all should, the rest of us should thank Cyril for failing so hard.
Yeah. But yeah, so these were kind of sort of setup episodes and kick us along, introduce us to some of the main characters.
But it also kind of served as a whole recruitment arc on its own. I mean, it culminates in him meeting Luthen, and, you know, they're running away and, you know, just getting away together, but it's how they connected. It's an origin story, and it's a complete origin story of how did Andor get connected to the rebellion? Well, this is how, and it really stands on its own as a story. So I liked it on its own terms, in a sense, as well as being a setup for the rest of the series.
Yeah, and I like how you put that, because you have, like, by the end of that third episode, you sort of have something of a closure with Cyril, right? Standing there with the, you know, dust all over his face, with all the explosions, with the sergeant screaming, "We've got to go!" and you know, Andor and Luthien taking off and leaving, and you know, all of the people who we've really been introduced to have kind of a closure point in that story. So yeah, I do like that as that it is its own sort of story. But it does lead us into eventually what becomes a heist. So how did you guys feel about that storyline?
I think that might be my favorite of the 4 arcs from the first season. And I mean, it's hard to argue with the, like, just the raw emotional power of the prison break, but the heist at Aldhani, I think, showed it showed Andor and the rebellion and the, like, a side of the Empire that I had never given much thought to. It was just a really well executed heist, and I love a good heist. Ocean's 11 is one of my favorite movies ever. And this was like a you know, seriously dramatic Ocean's 11, and you know, just when you think this is like simple, grounded, almost low budget Star Wars, you get the eye, and you're just kind of blown away visually, right? And you're like, this really is a galaxy far, far away. It's a world of wonder and astounding power, and you, like, it's as moving as the magic of the Force is. And in a sense, you know, I love the Force. It's one of the things that I love most about Star Wars, and having wondrous things like that didn't, like, completely replace the lack of the Force in this series, but it reminded me that this is a setting of wonder as well as a setting of you know, grounded grittiness.
It's not just science fiction, it's space fantasy.
Yeah.
I really liked it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, but it's space fantasy in a way that doesn't undermine the gritty realism of it. Right. Like they end up complementing each other in a really magnificent way. The you know, it's the center of this indigenous culture's culture and religion, and it's just, they work together really well.
Yeah, I really like this arc too. I think it might actually be my least favorite, but not because it's not really good. It's just because the other ones are standouts. So, like, it's, you know, maybe 4th place, but it's a really, you know, it's, every one of the arcs is a winner. But it's really interesting with this one because you get a rebel cell here, but they're all so different. You have Skeen, who is, you know, really just probably fell into this because he didn't have another choice on getting away from whatever he was getting away from. He's like, I guess I can join this, you know, this job. And, you know, he's probably thinks he's going to get paid out because, of course, he ends up trying to, you know, trying to just take the money and run. And then you have Senta and Vel, who are, you know, kind of the true believers. And you have, I can't remember his name, but you have the guy who's writing his manifesto. And then you have the Imperial officer who you find out who at first you don't know is an Imperial. But you find out he is, because he had a relationship with an Aldani woman, and she was killed, and so that kind of led to his kind of turn to the rebellion. And you also get to learn kind of how the Empire has operated in taking down, like stamping down these various worlds in different ways. Like they talk about how they've tried to dilute the Aldani culture in ways by, because the Eye is their big pilgrimage, but they try to they open, I think they mentioned they opened taverns along the way to try to get people drunk and to fall off the pilgrimage. And they're saying less and less people are coming every year because the Empire has been so like systemic in their destruction of this, and it's not even, and they're not like going in and wiping out these people with their weapons, which they completely could. They're doing it in these kind of other ways, because they're not quite at the place where they're going to blow up planets and all that. That's coming later, of course. But it's just really interesting to learn, of how they're doing that. And then just the action and the heist is really good. You have everybody doing their part. And of course, like you said, the visual feast of the Eye itself is, because they need Andor there. He's the pilot that's going to get them out. And he's like the ship, it's ready to go, right? It's like, I can't do it if it's not completely ready. And he's just there really to try to, make some money at first. And then I think he really does kind of start to believe a little bit, he's not full believer yet, but I think he's starting to believe, because he ends up taking his cut of the money in the end. But I think he does take the manifesto. And I think that's like, this is kind of the next building block of him becoming kind of the rebel, intelligence officer that we'll see. Like he's seeing what the Empire is doing on, he sees what they did on Ferrix. Now he sees what and then he sees what they're going to do here. And then of course in the next arc, he'll have first personal consequences with the Empire, and that'll really kind of get him ready to go full on rebellion. So yeah, I really like this one too.
Yeah, I would say this on my first watch through, this is probably like 2 or 3. This is probably my favorite arc as well. And that's because, and I didn't realize it at first, but it really is a microcosm for why people join the rebellion. And because you get kind of a wide berth, right? You've got Andor, who's there for the money, more or less, but he was pushed into it. He is sort of, I don't know, has a lineage with his parents in rebellious sort of activity. And then you've got a character very much like him, Skeen, who is literally just in for the money. Like he told a fake story about his brother having his land stolen and hanging himself, and it's the Empire's fault. And so originally it's revenge, but you find out that no, that was all made up. And he's just there to try and get rich. I think Karras is the kid who's got the manifesto. So he's like the idealistic. Vel and Cinta are a very interesting dynamic, because Vel is the rich girl who strikes me as sort of the rich aristocrat who's interested in the plight of the poor people and wants to help, but doesn't necessarily understand what that really means. And on the other hand, Cinta watched her whole family get killed by stormtroopers, and so like she is very, and that plays out through their entire dynamic through the rest of the show, where Vel is all about them and Cinta's all about the rebellion, because they came from different places. And then Lieutenant Gorn and Tamaran, the former Imperials, one officer, one stormtrooper, and you don't really find out why Tamaran leaves. You just find out he's an ex-stormtrooper. But Gorn's story about the sort of, and this goes into what really gets put on display from here forward in Andor, what I would call the disinterested brutality of the Empire. The sort of and it's funny because it feels like the Imperials get more and more brutal as we go through each episode of Andor. Like just the things they do to finally where you get to the point where Andor's in jail or in prison, and the guards are just do not care, but they are just brutal in their uncaringness. And we start to see that on display, in the higher ups, with the engineer and with the, planetary governor talking about sort of dismantling the Aldani people, like we said. And but everybody in the station wants to see the eye. Like, it's sort of this, we're going to stop all of these native peoples from seeing this. And in fact, we're going to bulldoze the entire valley and turn it into an airbase, so they're never going to see it again. But we all want to see it. It's sort of an excellent both look into like what a rebellion gets built on top of, but like also why you need a rebellion in the first place because of how terrible the Empire is.
Yeah, more than any. Oh no, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, because you see the result of of the heist, it's going to result in more, in a bigger crackdown. Like if you in the later episodes of Andor, or like in the early episodes of Andor, stormtroopers they're not doing security work on, Coruscant and other places. They're really the shock troopers who are in the military. The security forces are a different thing. But after the heist, things get to crack down, and like that's what leads to Andor's prison sentence getting so extended, because presumably what leads to kind of basically no one's getting out of the prison because they just don't care anymore. Like, and they're going to crack down as hard as they can. And we kind of see that parallel with Rebels too, because we see in Rebels, as the rebel activity increases, the Empire starts, funneling more military assets to try to catch them, and which is impacting the local citizens. So it's really a double-edged sword for the rebellion to, like, you're fighting for the people, but the people are going to face some consequences for your actions. So, I think it's really interesting in Andor, because you see that a little bit in Rebels, but I feel like the Ghost Crew doesn't really ever feel too bad about it. Because it is more of a kid show, but in this, like, you really get more of a sense of it's affecting the people. So, I think this one is really interesting to kind of set that up, and how the Empire is going to crack down and, like, get more, as you said, get more and more brutal, until eventually they have a planet killing weapon that supposedly will strike the fear into the hearts of everyone and will keep everyone in line. But unless we have a capped certain intelligence officer who can stop it. So
yeah, and I don't think it's exactly in this arc. I think it's a little bit later, but you get that conversation between Luthen and Mon Mothma, where Luthen is saying, no, we want the Empire to show their hand, essentially. Yeah. And people are going to have to suffer in order to show the public that the Empire is all about that brutality, is all about that, that indiscriminate, causing people to suffer just to see them suffer, for really no profit to themselves, running Cassian through the prison system. They don't even know who he is. I mean, there's a total lack of due process there. It's just making it obvious to people that this is tyranny, that this is oppression, because not everybody does feel it. And weirdly, this was the show that made me really understand how evil the Empire was. Like, no other film or show in the Star Wars franchise had really put that evil, oppression, tyranny, brutality on display the way Andor has. And I think you're right, Jeff. Rebels is kind of too much of a kids show. They kind of hinted at it, and that came close, but you don't feel it until you see Andor.
Yeah, it's one thing when you have, Darth Vader and Palpatine and Peter Cushing with his vaudeville portrayal of Tarkin.
Yeah.
And which all of them do an amazing job, Cushing especially. But they're all bigger than life villains, or bigger than reality villains. Whereas what you get in this, in Andor's capture, it's just this stormtrooper who's like ticked off because they're having to do work effectively.
Yeah.
And so he, quote unquote, captures Andor. There's no judgment. It's just a sentencing, basically, just like in Batman. They're going to send him out onto the ice, but they just sent him to prison for 6 years because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Which hilariously, if you're the Empire, you're like, see, the system works. We caught the guy. You just didn't realize you caught him.
Yeah, I don't think they ever figured it out, did they?
No.
Because he was Keith Gergo was his alias, which is a great Keith Gergo.
Right, because by the time the ISB is actively looking for him, he's in prison. They don't know it. But by the time he's out of prison, they're still just looking for him. And they never even realized he was in prison. Like such a like an amazing display of like the terribleness of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that moves us into kind of the prison and break arc. And I want to make sure that we don't just focus on like Andor's time in prison, because there's a lot that happens in this with our other characters. So, feel free to talk not just about the prison itself, but, whatever from this arc you feel like needs a spotlight.
Yeah. To focus on, to go to Mon Mothma for a second, after the heist, she's horrified at what happened because she's been funneling kind of her family money into what she thinks is like, small acts and maybe aid to, oppressed people and things like that. But she didn't, this is her first realization that there's real stakes here. And like I was mentioning earlier, there's that book where it talks about how she was picked up by the ISB early on once the Empire started, because she was kind of one of the vocal oppositions to Palpatine's, power grab. But of course that they don't really talk about that here. It's more of like she thinks she's just giving some money to aid the people, but she learns how serious it is when she learns it was the heist, and like she's horrified that happened because basically like she funded it basically. And little does she know that her cousin is one of the principal actors in it, because we find out in this arc of the prison break that Vel is actually her cousin. Her whole it's just interesting her as well with her relationship with her family, because she's pouring so much of herself into the rebellion, or into the into this opposition to Palpatine, which will eventually become the rebellion, that like her daughter just like is basically checked out of a relationship with her. And she's in the book that I was mentioning, like her and her husband it's a marriage of convenience. It's one of these arranged marriage type of things. So there's not really much real love there, but it's just like seeing them play off of each other is just really, in her navigating this like sphere of the the elite of Coruscant, but also trying to figure out like, okay, I've got to. They're now checking. The Empire's now checking the balance sheet. So how do we fix this so that I'm not under suspicion? Which leads to her, getting into an alliance with a criminal, and potentially her daughter into a marriage, which I think we might see in season 2, because there's a scene in the trailer of like dancing around and stuff. So yeah, I think not to not skip over her part, I think this is a really good one for her too.
Yeah, I agree. I loved especially the attempt Mon Mothma was trying to make to balance her political persona with her commitment to the rebellion, with her commitment to her family, whom she clearly cares about, even though she is always putting them second. And yet, the ones who are paying attention to, especially to her daughter, they do not have her daughter's or the family's best interests in mind. And that tension again, great performance, her tension with Luthen. I loved the development of that as the consequences begin to spill out across the Empire. And you see a bit the, there's a sense in which Cassian's arrest is a result of those consequences as well, because it's just a general crackdown that the Empire is doing in response to the heist, and he's just swept up in the ideological web, and it's interesting to me how he begins to play around with the possibility of being a leader. Like up till this point, he's absolutely been a loner or at best a kind of distant follower. But he starts recognizing that people actually look up to him and follow him. A definition of leadership that really has stuck with me is, it doesn't matter what you think you're doing. If you turn around and people are following you, you're a leader. And it doesn't matter how strong a vision you have and how much you think you're leading people. If you turn around and nobody's there, you're just taking a walk. And here's Andor kind of discovering his own leadership, but also recognizing the greater potential for leadership, the real leadership in Kino Loy.
I was going to say he's learning from the feet of, a really great leader within the prison of Kino, who's their floor supervisor, when they're making these, parts of that we will eventually find out are parts of the Death Star, or parts of like the reflecting dish. So yeah, really, he's really learning at the, from someone who's ends up leading all these men to at least give them a chance for freedom, even if he may not, get a chance for freedom. Because of course, he says that when they escape the prison, he says, "I can't swim," and maybe off to his death. And there's of course the theory out there that because he's played by the same actor as Supreme Leader Snoke, that Snoke was built off of Kino Loy's DNA. I don't think that's true, but that's a fun theory to think about.
Yeah. Now, what I absolutely love that they did with this through this set of 3 episodes is what they did was they showcased everyone's prison, and it's very obvious that Andor literally in prison, and what a disaffected brutality, like nobody's listening, right? I love that line where he's trying to convince Kino to tell him how many guards. And he's like, "You really think they're listening? They don't need to. All they need to do is turn the floor on and off 2 times a day." Like that, and it's so brutal because you've watched somebody die on that floor. But that's their whole interaction with the Imperials at that point. And the faceless voice, the voice of the devil, basically, coming out of the loudspeakers. But you get to see Mon Mothma's prison in sort of full blown, also completely in white. Like you see, Andor's world is in a white room, a series of white rooms. So is Mon Mothma's. You get to see Deidre in the ISB, which is the prison she chose, which is a series of white rooms. Cyril's the break on that. His prison is home. His mom. And Cyril's there for both, and all his faults.
Milk is white.
Right. Blue milk. And we see Bix taken into custody and put in her mind prison, effectively. Like she's in prison in the hotel, but the reality is her prison is now in her mind. By the time Andor comes to rescue her, she doesn't even want to leave. It's the explosion that gets her out the door, because she's been so affected by the what they've done. And we see Ferrix get put into a prison, right, with the take over the Imperials. And it's just, it was like the 3rd watch through when I realized what they had done. And I was like, oh, that was really good. Really good cinematography. But it's such a good display of, prisons you end up in accidentally, prisons you put yourself in, prisons you choose. And it was just done so masterfully how they sort of slowly skipped through them and showcased the scenes. From that, and then we get sort of the break. All of them sort of choose a path forward and a way to break out of it. And hilariously, it all centers on Andor and Marva's funeral, which I gotta admit, the scene where B2 Emo is having to come to terms with Marva's death, you know, it was one of those, there's a lot of dust in the room and I'm not crying, you're crying, shut up. kind of scenes for me.
Like in Owner when their dog dies, like the dog is sad.
Yeah.
And Cassian's not there, but Brasso will take care of him because Brasso's the best.
Yeah.
Brasso is the best.
Brasso is really the best. He is the best. You can tell he's like, he's that best friend because he just like, when Andor comes up to him and is like, hey, this is what we did last night. And then like, he just adds on to it. And then we got in this fight and I punched you. And
yeah. Yeah.
So we move into the climax. What was the high point for that for y'all?
I mean, it's got to be Marva's speech and her when and B2 gets to project the speech. So he has a part in inciting this rebellion on Ferrix. And then he gets kicked over, and that's what leads to the violence. Because I mean, that's like kicking the dog. Like you're not going to get away with that.
Yeah.
At least for me, that was I think that was the high point. Is just that whole, because that's what kicks it off, and that's what leads to this planet kind of fully going off into rebellion and fully, maybe not a good situation will be left after the fact, but. People are tired of this, like, and they haven't even been under imperial control per se for that long. They've been under the corporate security for a while, and now the Empire's back, and they're already tired of it after a few months or so. So,
I don't know if I would say this is my favorite part, but it's the part that kicked me in the gut the most. I think was the recognition that Bix is not going to get better. That Bix is just, like as permanently devastated as you can be. And Cassian is dedicated to getting her out anyway, to getting basically his family out. But like the reality of the consequences. Again, Star Wars is not a series that's known for having a dramatic heaviness to its consequences. And so having the consequences of Cassian's actions kind of hit him in that this is somebody I really deeply cared about, and I have hurt her irreparably. She has been destroyed because of me. And I don't know about you two. I really struggled with the ending, the kill me or take me in line at the end. I have really wrestled with what Andor is trying to say there, because I guess I just struggled to follow his motivations throughout the series, but at least on the most recent watch through, I think maybe part of it is he really does have something of a death wish of I have caused so much harm to the people that I love. I've gotten them out safely. Now I'm going to go to the people that I know are trying to kill me and just, commit suicide either slowly or quickly with them. Because I know, as Luthen had told him right from the beginning, you're going to die fighting these people. You can do it slowly or you can do it all at once for something that matters. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'll go to where I can die. Because I think he's feeling maybe penitential, maybe sorry for the damage that he's caused. But again, I don't know. This is one of my struggles with Andor.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. I thought of it that way. That's a good point. I always thought it was more of like like he knows. I mean, he knows he having been in prison, having already started fighting against the Empire. Like in Ferrix, like he can't be on Ferrix anymore. And if he goes anywhere, he's probably going to end up getting captured by the Empire at some point, just because there's like eventually they're going to be probably circulating his picture and stuff, or they'll have more data on him, and so like he really is not going to be able to hide very well. So I think I think there's probably some of what you said in there. I kind of took it as it's a little bit of survival, because he's always been in survival mode. So he's like, okay, I can't survive on my own anymore. I need, and my home is effectively gone with both Marva and Ferrix. Marva being, having died, and then Ferrix basically being, probably going to be razed to the ground, after this. So he's like, there's nowhere else I can go. So, but I have I have an inn here. So I think part of it is survival, but I think he has realized the oppression of the Empire, because going back to, like I said, his father, and even before that as a kid, it was, because I think it was actually the Republic at that time on his home planet. It was a Republic like ship that had crashed. So it wasn't even the Empire yet, because I think it was still during the Clone Wars, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they killed, some of his tribe. So there's already, like, he in the Republic became the Empire. So he has this, motivation against them from his childhood. So, he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old, from Rogue One. So, I think part of it is that he's finally, like, he's been trying to run away from the fight, but it's almost like he's now, instead of running away from it, he's going to run to it and run to the side that will, that he can take part against them finally in a big way. So I think it's some of that too, but I like what you said. And yeah, I think it's like kind of all these motivations kind of wrapped together, because I think he is a pretty complex character. And so I think all these are coming into play.
Yeah, there's a great scene we get with him and Clem as Cassian as a kid, where Clem is cleaning off these, they're heat transfer things. I don't know what they are in the world of Star Wars, but that's what they are. You can tell from the fins. But where Clem's cleaning them off, right? And he talks about the fact that, everybody just sees junk and they want the new thing, and they'll pay, 10 times what it's worth, but all it takes is a little bit of cleaning and then you've made it new. And this message to Andor that he remembers from Clem, and then he sees Marva's speech, and Marva's speech, the cinematography around that is so good, because they shoot her from several angles. Where you can see B3M on the crowd, you can see her in front of the Imperials, and they time it. They time those shots to who she's speaking to. And they time it. They do a round robin with Andor, with Deidre, with Luthen. Even you can tell Luthen walks away, and I'm thinking this is mostly the way Skarsgård was asked to portray this. And I think he did a good job. But it looks like he was listening to what Marva was saying, and you see this little bit of almost movement within him, because the speech we get that he gives before this is sort of this, like, the ego that started this fight knows that it's going to be crushed before I get to see any good out of it. It's sort of this fatalistic, like, I've already died on my sword, I'm just waiting for it to happen kind of a thing. And you can kind of see the spark of maybe that's not just it. And at this point, Andor is effectively without a purpose. Because, when he leaves Ferrix, when he leaves Marva there, because Marva tells him, I can't go and you can't stay. And he says, well, I'm coming back, right? And his goal is always to come back and get Marva and go live on the beach planet, somewhere sunny and nice and safe, without a real acknowledgement that Marva is Ferrix. And quite literally, by the end of the episode, she is a part of Ferrix. Granted, part of her was used to knock out several stormtroopers, which is awesome. But it's just great watching him hit those stormtroopers with her in brick form. But he through the course of the speech, you sort of get this, whether you had a purpose or not, or there is a purpose, and that is to fight the Empire. here it is. And what I see with him and Luthien in his ship, coolest ship ever, at the end of the episode, is him sort of telling Luthien, like, I know you were here to try and kill me, so if that's what you want to do, you can do it. But I'm here to fight. Like this is it. Like, this is all I've got, and so let's do it. And so that's kind of how I took it. I don't know if that's what the director was going for, but that's sort of the way I took it. It's like, because what he says, he tells Luthien, like, you were here to kill me, and Luthen's like, you don't make it easy. Just that exchange.
There's a mutual respect that's grown between them. Yeah.
And you can see when Andor says that line, Luthien smiles, and it's one of the few times, it's one of the real smiles. There's a couple times you get a real smile out of Luthien, and Skarsgård does that so well, where he does the fake smile and you can tell it's fake, and the real smile and you can tell it's real. And just when he walks into the back of the shop after hearing about Aldhani, and he just laughs.
Yes.
So that's how I kind of took it. It was just sort of like, I'm in. Like, your long play over these last 12 episodes, you won. I'm in. Kind of a deal. But that, I guess that wraps us up. Oh, sorry. What were you going to say, Robert?
Oh, no, I was just going to agree with you. That's definitely where, I mean, the effect of it anyway is that he's in. He's now part of the rebellion. So, which allows us to have a season 2.
Yeah. So where do you think season 2 is going to take us? I guess we'll try and keep the wild speculation to, like, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We've done some throughout the course of the show, so
yeah. I mean, I think so. One thing I've wanted to see in Star Wars since Return of the Jedi is to see Bothans, and I thought season 1 we might get some, and we didn't. So I'm hoping season 2 will give us the Bothans in canon finally, because I think they've been talked about in books, but I don't think we've seen a Bothan on screen. So I hope we get to see Bothans, involved in some, intelligence mission, and we get to know our guy Manny Bothans, R.I.P. Manny, who died to get the plans to Death Star. But and I already kind of talked about it, but I think we'll see Mon Mothma's big speech against the Gorman massacre, and I think Andor might help incite the riot that leads to the massacre, and Cyril might be involved too. Like, Andor might be there, and Cyril's actions lead to the riot starting, which leads to the Empire, doing the massacre, which then leads to Mon's speech and her escape. But I think we might see her daughter's wedding, and that's kind of like the last thing she sees before she gives her speech, because her daughter is not referenced in anything after this in the books that have come out. So, like, I kind of wonder if her daughters and her husband are going to be, taken prisoner and killed, or hopefully not. I hope not, but I wonder if that we might see that as kind of another part of her, like, breaking rebel to, finally declare that she's going to stand against the Empire. So those are kind of the main things I've been speculating on.
Yeah, I don't know if I have particular speculations, but what I'm really looking forward to in season 2 is more great character work, and especially I want to see if Luthen, you quoted Batman earlier, is I want to see if Luthen will die a hero or live long enough to become a villain.
Yeah.
And I am genuinely curious to see where Cyril and Dedra end up going, both individually and as a team. I kind of hope that at least one of them will break away from the Empire and become a hero. Like, will recognize the folly of what they've been chasing and have a moment of conversion. I think I would love to see that. I have no idea if that would actually happen, but you know, if I were writing the series, that's something that I would like want to arrange. Yeah, and I do hope that I don't know. I hope that I find a way to connect with the character of Andor, because it's such a great show, and it's just like the one frustration I have is like, I don't know why, but I don't connect with the central character. So I'm hoping season 2 will open that door for me.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I don't have any speculations or like any wants. I'm trusting in the Force on this one. But it looks good, and I am excited. That's definitely. Yeah, I really want this to be like top 5 TV shows of all time, not just, you know, single season. So I do want to talk about a little bit about how we're going to do this show on Secrets of Star Wars, because it's coming out in a very strange way. They're going to be releasing 3 episodes every Tuesday for, was it 4 weeks? So 12 weeks, yeah. 4 weeks, 12 episodes total. As much as we love to do a 3-hour-long marathon podcast every Sunday night to talk about 3 episodes of Star Wars, we've all realized that we probably shouldn't, in all prudence. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep pace with 1 episode a week. And so over 12 weeks, we'll cover the entire series. And that means we will fall behind the release a little bit, but we hope you still bear with us, and you can poke our comments and poke at us on the Discord if you have any any disagreements on that one.
I mean, I think we're really going to be really good at the speculation that Andor might survive the season, but you know, we'll have to see. Might have to wait 12 weeks to see if we're right, but
yeah,
I don't think he'll survive it by much, though. I mean, this guy has a death wish. Oh man, yeah, but no, I'm really glad we're going to try and. Our goal is to like do justice to each episode.
Yes,
while acknowledging, yeah, I really love the structure of, you know, doing these sort of 3 episode arcs, like little mini seasons. I think it's a really interesting storytelling technique. But unfortunately, like you say, Patrick, I don't have the stamina to be able to do justice to each episode. If we're doing 3 episodes a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one reason I've heard they're doing it this way, that they're releasing the show this way, is to be eligible for the Emmys. Because I think to be eligible, you have to finish by a certain date in May for the next year's Emmys. So I don't know if that's true, or if they just like want to keep the momentum going because it's one of their highest rated shows. So like they just don't want people to get bored of, you know, over 12 weeks instead of the normal 6 or 7 weeks of a Star Wars show. So.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to go listen to our deep dive of each episode of Andor Season 1, check out some of the earlier episodes of the Secrets of Star Wars on the SQPN network. Something I did want to mention before we move on is the music from the show was fantastic. It's sort of this combination of synth wave, dark wave, techno, that some occasionally bursts into classical music. So that, you know, I thought they did a really amazing job with that. So did you guys have any other final thoughts about season 1 of Andor?
No, other than, you know, we didn't talk about him, but I really like the drummer guy on Ferrix, who I guess is like the alarm bell for the shifts change and everything. He's up on his tower and has this giant bell rings. Yeah, the giant anvil.
Yeah.
And I hope he comes back. I hope we get to see more of him. So
we'll see if Ferrix survives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah. I'm not sure I have any real last thoughts either. I agree about the music. I don't know how they're going to top the way they layered the music in the intro of each episode, layering all together to become the music of the funeral, of Marva's funeral. And I mean, yeah, just like the integration of the music was really astounding and intentional. And I don't know, what are you going to do to top that? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm hopeful. Trusting in the Force. Well, I think that's it for this episode of Secrets of Star Wars. And of course, we would like to take a moment to thank our patrons, including Justice M, Jack M, Mercedes E, Tim D, and Bob N. Their generous donations help us to create the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows here at StarQuest. And you can join them at sqpn.com/give. And now we'd like to hear from you, our listeners. What are your favorite parts of Andor Season 1 and your wild speculations about Season 2? You can let us know by sending us an email at starwars@sqpn.com, on our social media pages, or by leaving a comment on our channel on the StarQuest Discord server, which you can find at sqpn.com/discord. Until next time, Jeff Haecker, thanks for joining us.
It's Patrick.
And Robert King, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Patrick Mason. Thank you for joining us on the Secrets of StarQuest, the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Sacred Art. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at starquest.fm/art.